We've all seen it, right? That big, bright thing in the night sky. Our moon. It's always there, super predictable, and totally natural. Or is it? Yeah, let's get into it, because today we're going to look at a pretty wild theory that says our moon might not be what we think it is at all.
And really, that's the core question we're asking today. What if the moon isn't just a big rock that got caught in our orbit by chance? What if it was built? I know, it sounds straight out of a movie, but you'd be surprised where this idea actually came from.
Yep, you heard that right. This wasn't some late-night internet forum post. We're talking 1970, smack in the middle of the Cold War, the height of the space race. This idea came from actual accredited scientists, from the Soviet Union, no less. They were looking at all this new data from space and thought, hang on, this looks designed.
Their names were Mikhail Vosin and Alexander Sherbakov. And these guys weren't lightweights. They were from the Soviet Academy of Sciences. In 1970, they dropped a bombshell of a paper with a hypothesis so out there, so wild, that we're still talking about it today. Their idea? That the moon is a giant, hollow spaceship.
Okay, so their whole argument basically boiled down to this. What if we've been looking at the moon completely wrong? They said, look, its orbit, what it's made of, the very fact that it's there, all of it makes a lot more sense if you just stop assuming it's natural. What if it's a piece of technology, put there on purpose by someone or something way more advanced than us?
And the story they told was, epic. They pictured this ancient, hyper-advanced civilization building what's basically a cosmic Noah's Ark. They took a planetoid, hollowed it out, and lined it with a super strong metal hull. Then they flew this massive ship across the galaxy and just parked it in our orbit. And there it sat, maybe watching us, for who knows how long.
So you've got to be asking, why on earth would they think that? Well, Vosin and Sherbakov weren't just making things up. They didn't pull this out of a hat. Their whole theory was built on three big scientific mysteries, or anomalies as they called them, that back then nobody really had a good answer for.
All right, anomaly number one. For them, the first big red flag was the moon's density. To put it simply, the moon is just too light for its size. It's kind of fluffy, cosmically speaking. When you stack it up against Earth or the other rocky planets, the math just doesn't work.
So here's how they pieced it together. The moon's density is only about 60% of Earth's. Plus, its mass seems to be all jumbled up, not packed into a dense core like a normal planet. So for these two scientists, the easiest answer, the one that made the most sense? The moon isn't solid. It's hollow. A giant empty shell.
Okay, but it doesn't stop there. The next piece of the puzzle is probably the most famous one, and honestly, it's pretty mind-bending. This one comes straight from the Apollo missions, from something NASA called the Bell effect. So get this. During the Apollo missions, NASA deliberately crashed parts of the spacecraft onto the moon's surface. They wanted to see what their seismographs, their earthquake detectors, would pick up. And what happened was just, wow. Instead of a quick thud, like you'd expect if you hit a big rock, the entire moon vibrated. It rang, like a giant bell or a gong.
Now, just think about that for a second. A solid chunk of rock isn't supposed to do that. The vibrations should just stop. But a huge, hollow object made of metal, well, that would ring just like a bell. So for our Soviet scientists, this wasn't just another weird puzzle. This was proof. This was the smoking gun.
And that brings us to the third and final piece of their argument, what the moon is actually made of. See, when the Apollo astronauts brought back all those moon rocks, scientists started analyzing them. And for Vosin and Sherbakov, the results just added more fuel to the fire. Turns out, the moon's crust has a ton of processed metals, like titanium. And if you know anything about materials, you know titanium is amazing stuff. It's super strong, super light, and it doesn't rust. To an engineer, that doesn't sound like a random jumble of cosmic dust. It sounds like an alloy, something designed on purpose. It was, they argued, the perfect material to build a giant, long-lasting spaceship hull. So, okay, let's recap. You've got these three really compelling points that seem to suggest the moon is artificial. It's an incredible story, right? But, like with any good mystery, you have to look at all the evidence. So what has science figured out in the 50-plus years since?
Because as cool as the whole spaceship idea is, scientists didn't just stop studying the moon. And today, we have some really solid, mainstream explanations for those exact same puzzles that got this whole theory started.
First up, that ringing like a bell thing. The theory says it's because the moon is a hollow metal ball. But the scientific explanation is actually a lot simpler. The moon is extremely, unbelievably dry. Its surface rock has been smashed to pieces by asteroids for billions of years. And here on Earth, water in the ground dampens vibrations. But on the moon, there's no water, so the sound waves just bounce around and around for a very long time. It doesn't ring because it's hollow. It rings because it's bone dry.
Okay, so what about the weirdly low density and all that titanium? Well, our best scientific theory for how the moon was made, it's called the giant impact hypothesis, actually explains both pretty neatly. The idea is that billions of years ago, a planet about the size of Mars smashed into a young Earth. This massive collision ripped off a huge chunk of Earth's lighter outer layers. That debris eventually came together to form the moon. That explains why it's less dense. And the titanium? Yeah, it's there, but not in some kind of refined, engineered form. Its concentration is totally normal for a body formed in that kind of violent, chaotic event. So, no spaceship needed.
So when you look at it, the science is pretty settled. All that evidence for the hollow moon theory, we've got good, natural explanations for it now. And yet, the idea just won't die. The spaceship moon is still a thing. So why? What's the deal with that?
Even though it's been pretty much debunked by the scientific community, this theory just has this incredible staying power. You see it pop up all the time, year after year. There's just something about it that people find absolutely fascinating. It's too good of a story to just forget.
And you can see why it's so alluring. First off, it came from actual scientists, not some random person on the internet, which gives it this veneer of credibility. Plus, it neatly solves a bunch of complicated puzzles with one simple grand idea. That's always satisfying, right? But I think the biggest reason is that it's just an amazing what-if story. It plays right into that little part of us that hopes the universe is way weirder and more mysterious than we've been told.
And you know, maybe that's where the real value of the hollow moon theory lies. It's not about being right, scientifically. It's about the feeling it gives you. It takes the most familiar thing in our night sky, something we barely even notice anymore, and makes it totally strange and mysterious again. It makes you look up at the moon and actually wonder.
So in the end, yeah, the moon is almost certainly just a big, beautiful rock. But the legacy of this wild theory is that it reminds us the universe is still packed with real mysteries we haven't solved. And it leaves you with this final, lingering thought. What other incredible secrets are out there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for the next person to come along and ask a beautifully strange question?